And we're back. So, welcome back. I'm your host for this morning, Richie Stone, in for BKP. If you want to reach us, you can find us at FYNTV, at FetchYourNews. You can always hit us on the telephone by calling us or texting us. Our number is 706-889-9700. Coming to you live this morning. Good morning from the office from FYNTV World Headquarters in beautiful LJ, Georgia. You can see it behind me here. Still got a lot of power outages. Schools are out. But we're glad you're with us. So I hope you guys got to see that Simmons interview. I hope you listened carefully. It was, I think, very newsworthy because he talked a lot about the dissatisfaction that a lot of Republicans are feeling throughout the country, especially in these districts that tend to either be moderate or districts that even Hillary Clinton won. And I left off, teeing it up there in the first half hour of the fact that the Democrats are losing credibility. And what I mean by that is they've played this game for a long time where they are able to use the 24-hour news cycle, and their allies in the media are able to craft a narrative and then be able to retroactively go back and recall these things with a one-sided opinion. I always use the example of the 2000 election that George Bush won after the recount. But if you hear anyone talk about it now, oh, it's the stolen election, or it's the one that Al Gore really won. And that this kind of thing happens all the time. We saw it with the police stuff. But culturally, the Democrats during the Obama years really made headway, and they're the party of Hollywood, they're the cool party, they're the hip college professors party, and that had an impact. But as the Obama years went on, Americans kind of fell out of that bubble, and we really saw it come to a head in the 2016 election. And now it's almost like they got burned by their own lighter, if you will. They've turned into the party of burning cities, killing cops, shutting down free speech at college campuses. I mean, it's like what started as a political correctness movement with the best of intentions has grown into this extremist, it's like you got to wonder, where does it end? And the American people, and we saw this in 2016 with folks that, especially blue-collar white voters that voted Democrat historically, go over to Trump because they had economic and cultural concerns as far as drug use and the opioid epidemic, and people, kids, entire generation dying of heroin overdose. And that's just not what the Democrats were talking about. And they've tried really hard. There's a new Politico article out. I think we have that, the Teflon Don, as they're calling them. And I have a couple quotes from that, if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Do we have that picture? Democrats have tried, Teflon Don confounds Democrats, from Politico. And if you look at it, Democrats have attacked, I think we're having trouble finding it, but the headline reads, Teflon Don confounds Democrats. Democrats have attacked the president every which way, but polling and focus groups show none of it's working. And then he goes on to say, they've tried attacking him as unfit for the presidency, made the case he's ineffective, pointing to his failure to sign a single major piece of legislation, and that he's using the president to enrich himself, and that his campaign was in cahoots with Russia. None of it is working. Data from a range of focus groups and internal polls paint a difficult picture for the Democrats heading into 2018 and 2020. Now, this is something we've been telling you for a while, because it's something they tried in 2016, and people just are not buying it anymore. And what happens when we get these revelations is it makes the media and Democrats look, I don't know if hypocritical is the word, but it's like their narrative turns against them. Just like when Trump won and we saw all the shocked faces in the media that night and the week following, when they had been wrong. They were wrong. No other way to put it. Despite the fact that they'd been telling us for months and months and months, there's no way he's going to win. He has no support. White college-educated women, white college-educated voters, none of them are going to support him. The Obama coalition, yada, yada, yada. And it just didn't turn out that way. And then we saw the new strategy to go after him just so hard and to, as I said, make him look unfit. The Russia thing. Yeah, there's the headline right there. And just anything they could throw at him, unfit for him. We heard people talking about the 25th Amendment. You can look on Twitter, and for the first 6-8 months of this presidency, it has just been nonstop vitriol, anger, hatred, anything that can describe what having Hitler as president would be like. And oh yeah, they said that too. They called him a fascist. And what's happened, and this is the real scary part, is there's people out there that believe it. They don't see it. A lot of us that are locked into politics understand how this stuff works, and that anything they say you have to take with a grain of salt anyway. But what's really scary is these kids that believe it. These kids that grew up in the Obama era that only know the digital age. They don't know that the hyperbole machine is just that, and that you have to kind of balance that out with reality. And I guess what I'm getting at is we see now this week, last week they were forced to denounce Antifa, who is just out of control. They threw smoke bombs at the cops last week in Portland, not to mention what they've done at Berkeley and other college campuses. And it's just scenario after scenario where they're shutting down free speech, getting violent, throwing bottles of urine at people. And then it makes you think back to Charlottesville and the outrage machine that went on after that, where they really tried to pin Donald Trump as a racist. And you think, well, what's the common denominator at Charlottesville and all these other violent protests? It's Antifa. And, say what you want about the protesters that were there on, protesting the statue, or the pro Robert E. Lee statue folks. That was a crowd that wasn't going to take it, and that's why the fight broke out. I mean, two wrongs definitely don't make a right. And the way he was criticized, and the way he was made to, denounce this, denounce that, and how that narrative has now blown up in their face, because we see what Antifa's done since. And what Charlottesville did is it shined a light on Antifa and their violence and their agenda. They're running around with Russian flags, or Soviet Union flags, Russia nonetheless, and it kind of blows up the other narrative that Russia's bad. It's like, well, hey, I thought Russia was the enemy now, but they're over there, waving the hammer and sickle as if that should be the American flag. Just completely denouncing what we stand for. So there's been an about face now, and you listen to Morning Joe all week this week. Suddenly they're nice to Trump, which is really crazy. And Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, a lot of these folks are coming to the table because they know what's going to happen. And really, all we have to do is look at 2016 and how Trump played that, and how they were able to make the GOP GOP primaries the main event, right? Remember the Democrat debates, and they were like on Friday nights and Sunday night, or opposite NFL games when no one was watching, because they wanted to hide the fact. They didn't want any attention on that, and they were just fine with it. Oh yeah, let's keep it on the GOP. We'll make fun of them every day on the news. Meanwhile, we're going to steal the primaries of Bernie Sanders and make sure Hillary's the person that gets the nomination. So we're put up a sheet. But what ended up happening is all the attention being on the GOP and Trump and those around him, and remember the Ted Cruz stuff and Marco Rubio when they were the final three, and how people wanted a split ticket. I mean, the point being, and Trump has known this throughout his career in New York, is as long as you're the one everyone's talking about, your opponents are forgotten. And that's who the Democrats are right now. They're on the sidelines. And they thought they would be the resistance, that by lasering in on Republicans. But Trump, I guess what I mean is they thought that the Trump White House, the Trump administration, would be their chance to square off with him, mano a mano. And what's now happening is folks like Bannon, and especially Donald Trump with his Twitter, they've lasered in on folks from their own party, fellow Republicans. And by doing so, the media, constantly is like, why would he attack his own party? Why is he doing this? Doesn't he want to get anything done? Well, yeah, sure he does. But what he's doing is exactly what he did in the primaries. He's keeping the conflict. You see, Trump knows how to structure a story too. He knows how to create a narrative. And conflict makes a narrative, makes a story. You must have it. Every movie, every story, every book has it. And by making the conflict within his own party, with folks like Mitch McConnell, with Paul Ryan, Bob Corker, whoever the chosen Republican is for that day, he's making it a Republican story, which gets us to the Republican primaries here in 2018. And the interview we just watched with Justin Simmons. Simmons is 31. He was first elected to the Pennsylvania State House, I want to say in 2010, which means he was, do the math, about 24 when he was first elected. So he's a veteran of this stuff despite his age. And he knows what's going on. I think, a lot of us saw this coming long ago, around that 2010 Tea Party wave. But we knew it would take a while for folks to wake up, especially in the Obama years. A lot of us thought that Romney would have been able to beat Obama in the 12 election, but it didn't shake out that way. Well, he's running again, or he's got an opponent now, Ryan McKenzie, who is also a millennial, 35 years of age. And we heard Justin talk about how Ryan is of the establishment. His dad is the former chairman of the Pennsylvania GOP and is quite connected, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, most of your politicians come from these types of connected families. And I was reading up on McKenzie's bio and his announcement, and I didn't disagree necessarily with what he had to say. And the same thing with Simmons. I think Simmons comes from a fantastic perspective, being an outsider, not being politically connected, being someone who understands what it's like for the everyday voter. And I think it's going to be a very fun race to follow, and hopefully they'll both be back on the show. But this race is going to get a lot of attention. Yesterday, John Gizzi in the White House press briefing asked Sarah Huckabee Sanders about this race specifically, and also broadly about whether the president will be supporting insurgent Republicans that are going to challenge the status quo, that are going to primary sitting incumbent senators and House reps. So circling back to the overall point here, this Simmons-McKenzie race is just a microcosm of what we're going to see all over the country. We're going to see these primary races, and they're going to get the attention. The Republicans are going to be the ones that talk about the issues. They're going to be the ones that have these debates that need to be had. You know, the establishment folks will kind of take the mantle for something that, for a lot of the stuff Democrats would have argued 10, 15 years ago, whether it be DACA or taxes, that sort of thing. And they'll have the conversation. Simmons, McKenzie, not whoever wins that in the Democrat, because the Democrats are way over here to the left. They're having conversations about, you know, free health care for all, single payer, and things that are just not winning topics. And we even saw Nancy Pelosi say that she's not for the Bernie Sanders method of health care reform. And like I said, we're going to see this all over the country. And by taking the debate to an intra-party matchup, the Democrats will be relegated to the sidelines. It's crazy that the party of Indian removal and slavery and rebellion that led to the Civil War and Jim Crow and segregation and the Vietnam War. I mean, Democrats have quite the resume of things that should have killed them as a party, yet they've survived it all. And it's crazy to think that Donald Trump's going to be the guy that possibly ends that by just boxing them out. Just like in basketball. It's like they're under the rim. Republicans are under the rim, and they've boxed them out. And, you know, like we said, it's going to take multiple election cycles to, quote, drain the swamp. But they're on the right track, because worst case scenario here is that the Democrats are still going to be irrelevant. You know, the only time they can even make relevant news is when their top Democrat, the person who ran for president last time, gets on TV and starts blaming everything she can on why she lost. And, you know, despite releasing her new book, she still can't grasp what happened. And that is just an example of the overall problem with their party and why they're fading fast. And when we get back, we're going to talk about that book and delve in a little bit about what actually did happen. Stay with us.